The first time I realized someone was stealing from me, it wasn't because my lights flickered or because I noticed my bill spike. It was because I walked into my backyard shed one morning and found Karen's Tesla sticking halfway inside bright orange cord slithering across the lawn like a thief's calling card. It was sucking electricity from my tool's outlet, my breaker box whining under the strain, and for a moment I thought I was hallucinating. But no, this wasn't a prank. This was Karen, queen of the HOA, self-appointed ruler of our cul-de-sac, deciding my shed existed to keep her car alive. I should have been furious right away, but honestly, I laughed. The absurdity hit me first. My old shed with broken hinges, drafty door stuffed with rusty lawn tools suddenly moonlighting as a Tesla charging station. Only Karen could think she had the right to do that. Only Karen would look at a neighbor's property and think, yes, mine now. I unplugged the cord, marched over to her yard, and found her clipping roses like she was in a commercial. Oversized sunglasses, smug smile. Classic Karen. I pointed at the cord stretched over the fence. Care to explain why your Tesla's drinking from my shed? She barely looked up. Oh, don't be dramatic. You weren't using it anyway. Besides, my electrician said your circuit is safer. Safer for her, maybe. For me, it was theft, plain and simple. When I said that, she actually waved her hand at me like I was an annoying fly. Couple of kilowatts, big deal. You should be glad I'm not suing you for tripping my breaker. My jaw nearly hit the ground. She was stealing my power and somehow twisting it into my fault. That was Karen in a nutshell. I didn't explode, though. That's what she wanted. She thrived on drama, on twisting every outburst into an HOA violation against whoever dared cross her. So I walked away, let her think she'd won. But I wasn't about to let it go. No way. If she wanted to leech off my shed, fine. I'd just make sure her smug little vampire routine ended with her car emptier than before. That night, I stayed up reading everything I could about Tesla charging and wiring. By dawn, I had a plan so simple it almost felt poetic. I reconfigured the breaker with some off-the-record tips from a buddy electrician. The outlet would look the same, light up green the same, but instead of filling her battery, it would quietly bleed it down. And sure enough, at midnight, I watched from my window as that bright orange cord slithered back into my shed. I raised a beer, grinning already, picturing her reaction the next morning. And oh, it was glorious. She stormed outside, already late for an HOA meeting, only to find her precious Tesla flatlined in my yard, tethered to my shed like evidence. Her scream echoed down the street, and by noon, the neighborhood was buzzing with rumors. Except the story wasn't Karen stole power. No, in her version it was I sabotaged her car. People whispered about sparks, illegal wiring, even jealousy. No one questioned why her car was in my shed to begin with. Somehow, once again, I was the villain. And, I'll be honest, that broke me a little. I started doubting myself. Maybe I had gone too far. Maybe by rewiring that outlet I'd handed her the weapon to paint me as unstable. For a couple of days, I thought about just giving up. Let her keep stealing, let her keep winning. Maybe that would be easier than constantly being the bad guy in her story. But then, one night I caught her in the act again, creeping across my lawn with that cord glancing around like she was breaking into a bank vault instead of my unlocked shed. I snapped pictures with a trail camera I'd hidden behind paint cans, crisp shots of her plugging in. The next morning, I printed one out and dropped it in the HOA president's mailbox. At the next meeting, he cleared his throat and mentioned unauthorized use of private property. Karen froze her mask, cracking just slightly. For the first time, she knew someone had her cornered. That was my spark again. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the villain. She was. Of course, Karen never admits defeat. The very next week, a city utility truck parked outside my house. 2 men in hard hats told me they'd gotten an anonymous report of illegal tapping into the grid. I nearly laughed in their faces. She'd accused me of the exact crime she'd been committing. They checked, shrugged, and left, but the message was clear. Karen had gone nuclear. If she could sick the city on me, what was next? Blackmail, apparently. She showed up at my door, sweet smile plastered on. Maybe we could work out a deal, she said. You let me use your shed at night and I'll waive your HOA dues for the year. I nearly spit out my coffee. Karen, you don't even have that power. She shrugged like a mob boss offering protection money. She wasn't just entitled, she was delusional. That's when I decided the only way to end this was to drag her into the spotlight. The neighborhood's annual Green Living Fair was coming up and Karen had already bragged her Tesla would be the centerpiece. Perfect. I set up a booth with a small projector pretending it was for solar panel demos. Meanwhile, I caught her one more time on camera sneaking into my shed under flashlight cord in hand. I had everything I needed. The day of the fair was bright and cheery, kids running around with lemonade neighbors strolling. Karen floated through like royalty wide-brimmed hat announcing her Tesla would lead the charge toward a greener future. I waited until she was in full speech mode, basking in applause, then raised my hand. If we're celebrating green living, shouldn't we also talk about accountability, like how we charge our vehicles? Karen flashed that plastic smile. Of course. That's why I charge responsibly at home. That was my cue. I hit the remote, and the screen behind me lit up with grainy footage Karen creeping into my yard, plugging into my shed. The crowd gasped. The video looped again and again, her smug little midnight heist playing out in HD. Karen froze, then tried to spin it. This is fake. He framed me, but the cord was unmistakable, her orange cord with her initials still taped on the plug. The murmurs grew louder. Someone even booed, and for once her words didn't stick. The HOA president cleared his throat. Karen, is this true? The silence said it all. She stormed out, humiliated. Her crown shattered. I thought that was the end. I was wrong. Within days, I found a violation notice taped to my door. Unauthorized outbuilding. Shed must be removed in 30 days. Karen's signature sat smug at the bottom. My shed had been there 15 years, grandfathered in before she even moved here. But this wasn't about codes, it was about power. She couldn't erase the footage, so she was trying to erase the shed itself. That night, sitting in my living room with the notice in my hands, I felt that familiar wave of exhaustion. Maybe she'd never stop. Maybe she'd keep filing complaints until I drowned in paperwork. I was one step from caving when my neighbor Dave pulled out old HOA bylaws proving my shed was untouchable. That was the second wind I needed. Still, Karen escalated. Fake noise complaint city inspectors showing up endless bogus accusations. I documented everything, building a folder thick enough to choke her lies. Then, one night I caught her again at 3 a.m, unscrewing my shed door hinges, muttering to herself. I filmed the whole thing, handed it to my lawyer, Rachel. This isn't just harassment anymore, Rachel said. This is trespassing, attempted vandalism. We can sue. And we did. Karen was served papers, her face twisting as the process server handed her the envelope. But even then, she kept going. At an HOA meeting, she waived her fake complaints, ranted about phantom hazards, accused me of running a secret business out of my garage. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably until Dave finally stood and said, Karen, enough. We've seen the evidence. Murmurs of agreement filled the room. The president announced she was suspended from her role effective immediately. She stormed out, red-faced eyes blazing. But the war wasn't over yet. A few nights later, I noticed something wrong. My breaker box was humming wires crossed in ways I hadn't left them. A metallic smell hung in the air like ozone after a lightning strike. My stomach dropped. Karen had tried to sabotage my house, maybe even start a fire while I slept. That was the line. I called the cops. They took it seriously, filed reports, and suddenly Karen wasn't just a nuisance. She was a criminal suspect. Still, she made one last desperate play. An emergency HOA meeting packed with neighbors. Karen stood at the front, folder in hand, accusing me of endangering the entire community, demanding my shed be torn down. Her voice cracked with rehearsed conviction. But this time, nobody bought it. I waited until she paused, then walked to the projector, plugged in a USB, and hit play. The screen lit up with crystal-clear footage, Karen in her robe and slippers, flashlight shaking in her hand, screwdriver crossing wires in my breaker box. Gasps filled the room. She lunged forward, screaming, It's fake. He edited it. He's obsessed with me, but the timestamp, the tool, her own muttering, it was undeniable. The HOA president's voice cut through her hysteria. Karen, that's enough. You're suspended indefinitely, and frankly, we'll be reviewing whether you belong in this community at all. The room erupted, neighbors cheering, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Karen's folder spilled to the floor, papers scattering like the last fragments of her reign. She stormed out, slamming the door, and within days the police charged her with trespassing, vandalism, reckless endangerment. Watching her hauled off in handcuffs was surreal. 4 years she'd ruled by intimidation, and now she was just another mugshot. And me, I didn't celebrate. I didn't throw a party. I just stood in my window that night, beer in hand, staring at the patch of grass where her Tesla once sat, remembering her smirk, her cord, her arrogance. And realizing the truth in the end, Karen wasn't defeated by me or the HOA or even the police. She was defeated by her own entitlement, because power stolen always runs out.